having our colleague, the Honorable Abdu Katuntu, through Zoom. Honorable Margaret is not feeling so well, so we may miss her today. We were joking with her shortly before coming on air that probably it is the NRM primaries that you know, the what do they call it? That fever, the exam fever. This must be the primary elections fever that has caught Margaret Muhanga. But so she's not feeling very well. Just a few days to the highly billed primary election of the NRM. But in the studio we have Professor Mwambusia Ndevesa. He needs no introduction. He's a prominent, he's a seasoned discussant or analyst on political issues and political science issues, social science, matters of public interest in Uganda, and of course a senior citizen. You're most welcome, Professor, to the Behind the Headlines.
Thank you, and good evening, the viewers and listeners.
Good, it's good to have you. We also have on my immediate left Mr. Ramadan Gobi, also a professor at MUBS at the Makerere University Business School, and he teaches political economy. You're welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
And how is it going? How is the pulse being felt from your side?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Good. Shortly, my technical team is going to inform me if we have the Honorable Kijaji, because he is an important person in this discussion. Allow me put on the mask because the situation is not the best around Kampala. So I will be using the mask. I just pray that you can listen to me very well. Our topic that we are going to be discussing, we are going to be having an insight into the forthcoming NRM primary elections, which is slated for this week. And then we will be having also a discussion on, we will be looking at the involvement of security and the outfit in the elections. Are they doing their best to ensure that the election turns out peaceful? We will be discussing those topics, especially concurrently, and looking at the issues that are going on around the country, especially with the primary elections. We have, by the last count, I checked, we have about 425 constituencies. Again, before we came on air, Professor Mwambusia joked and said, by the last count, they were about there, but he doesn't know, maybe one or two were added maybe by yesterday or this morning. You can never be sure with Ugandan things, and especially when it concerns, because there are 46, I think 47 new constituencies that were added recently. Whether or not they will be participating in the election is a discussion maybe for another time. But we have about 140 women constituencies that are meant to be filled, and about 238. These were the initial constituencies, directly elected constituencies, but to that you can add 46 that were recently approved a fortnight ago by Parliament. So those constituencies are on average having about 4 candidates from the NRM. The NRM has confirmed that they have filled, all constituencies have been filled and are being competed for. So that tells you how highly billed, or how exciting, or even inciting, if you like, the campaigns are going on. So we are going to be looking at those. Let me start with Professor Ndevesa, our guest, as we expect Arimpa to join us. From what we have seen so far, by the time we were checking with the Electoral Commission office, the chairman, Dr. Tanga Odoi, said, I wanted to be there myself, but I cannot make it There are reports that he has rushed either to Shema or to Koboko by this evening when I checked, because all of those places are potentially having violent elections and campaigns going on. Then you have seen the situation in Sembabule. So many guns being sighted. It is definitely violent. We have seen Tororo is having a problem. Candidates accusing each other of carrying guns and using it to harass or violate rights of others. Those are the accusations that are coming from Tororo. And then we have seen in Kavale there are accusations against some candidates. Then, of course, Bushenyi is having problems, a lot of potential there for violence. And then a lot of all these pockets in Mubende, I think Kasanda, if I'm not mistaken, the constituency of Simeon, the former police spokesperson. Vehicles being, windscreens being broken, guns being sighted, and all these things, accusations and counter-accusations. Why do you think, in your view, these big stakes, why there's so much heightened interest in a primary election at this stage?
Thank you. As the Bible says, what you sow is what you reap. I think we have militarized politics in Uganda for quite a long time. Political competition in Uganda is highly militarized and militantized, if you want. There is no tolerance and no compromise, not only during the election season, but throughout the political calendar. We are always using abusive language. We are always saying that if you don't compromise with me, you can go and get a chibanja elsewhere in another country. We are supposed to eliminate each other in politics. So I think we have not cultivated the culture and the politics of compromise, tolerance, and accommodation. And because we have practiced violence throughout, if, for example, somebody Googled Uganda's politics or Uganda generally, and was a tourist coming to Uganda, some might be scared because the police is always tear gassing. If one were to take stock of how many incidences of tear gas take place in Uganda, on average, you may find at least more than 5 every day. And when you go to parliament, you find there is no compromise. When you go to political talk shows, you find different political party representatives are never compromising. So when you are tear gassing,
here we compromise. We tolerate each other a lot.
I don't know how. I have not watched you a lot, but I know that when you were at NBS, there was no tolerance. At least there I watched you. So I am following. At least I followed you, and I don't agree with you. Therefore, we are reaping what we have sown. When you are beating people like Honorable Zake or any other people, do not think that you are just beating the opposition, and do not think that you are not showing those ones who are seated and watching, because now everybody thinks that using muscle power, not intellectual power, using hard power, not soft power, is the way to do politics in Uganda. So Uganda's politics has been militarized, and the political competition in Uganda is militarized. And that's why even we have very many generals as candidates. Look at the presidential candidates that we have always been having, and we are likely to have on the ballot papers. General Museveni, General Muchamuntu, General Tumukunde. I don't know which other general is also coming. So this is an atmosphere, a public sphere that has been poisoned by militarizing tactics, and that is what we are reaping. And you can see we are looking at it at primaries. Now what is going to come? We
are going to come to that question. But isn't isn't the reference to generals a misnomer in effect? When you say it has been militarized, are they the same with the participation, the militarization? Is it the same with the participation necessarily of the generals? Are you saying that because they are generals, then it is in effect automatically militarized? Because I know there are some countries where generals or soldiers have participated, but it is not necessarily violent. So is there something inherent in our election different from just the participation of the generals in themselves, maybe from the people? Because even the primary elections right now that we are talking about do not involve a general. They are by the people you see who are actually, like if they say Koboko, none of them is a soldier.
You are summarizing what I said wrongly. I didn't say that the political atmosphere is militarized because of the generals. The generals was one of the illustrations.
Okay.
I have said that we have militarized the political space. And militarizing political space does not necessarily zero only on the military, but I just gave you an example of the military involvement in politics. Because after all, most of these violences we have experienced have the military behind them. Incidentally, I must credit Ugandans that we have not experienced in our long instability politics communal violence. In Uganda, we don't normally have communal violence. That is one community trying to inherit another community. It is normally state-instigated violence. So the militarism does not necessarily actually even mean the people with uniform. Militarism is wider than people with uniform. Okay. Like, for example, our politics were militarized way back from the 1966 crisis, and that was not that the government in power was of generals, but they used the military. So the point I was making was not in reference only to the individuals. I am not talking about individuals as agents. I'm talking about the system. We have got a system of no tolerance, of no compromise, and a system where force seems to be idealized. We seem to be promoting, when somebody is not so militant, sometimes they say he's not fit to be a politician in Uganda. They used to make that reference in respect of Mose Semogerere. Say that one was fit only to be in the church, at the altar. He was not fit to be in politics. In other words, we seem to be saying that is the general attitude and perception, that those who have got military credentials are the people who are suitable to be in politics in Uganda. And the sum total of that attitude, those perceptions, those dispositions, those practices is what we are seeing now. And the atmosphere is actually poisoned. It is not only the primary elections. I was watching the news this evening. There was also violence between the youth of NRM and the NUP here in Kampala. And you can see even in the villages up country, they are taking there the kanyamas. I think some candidate in Shema has even imported kanyamas from Bwaise. So it is a question of kanyama politics now. It is not a question of civil politics. Okay. So the total sum of Uganda's politics in this era is not civil but military.
Good. Let me make a follow-up of that with Mr. Ramadan Gobi. The do-or-die nature of or the do-or-die demand for these positions, what do you relate it to in terms of the political economy?
I think, first of all, politics is about stakes, as you stated. And I really think the stakes are so high in these NRM primaries. They are high because this is the re-election for the various positions they are going for.
In the country.
I should hazard a guess that between 60 to 70% of those who are going to win the primaries, they are likely to turn out to be the winners of the main election, which we shall have. Those who are going to win on Friday. And they know that. That's why I think they are, all of them now fighting so hard to ensure that they are the ones to carry the flag. And also you remember, a few months ago, I don't know, weeks I think, the rebel MPs went and begged for forgiveness to
about
go...
2 months ago.
About 2 months ago. To go back into...
The group of Sechikubo, Barnabas Tinkasimire, Monica from Teso, that group, and this other gentleman, they were about 16, yeah.
Ask yourself, why were they asking for forgiveness? They have been rebellious against the party for most of the period they have spent in parliament, since they were elected on NRM ticket. They opposed the change of that clause in the constitution to remove the term limit and the age limit.
102.
But towards the election, they went back to the party leadership and sought forgiveness. It's because they know that they need that party ticket to go to the main election with. If they are the flag bearers, they are halfway the journey, almost, or something like a 75%.
Is that across the country as we talk now?
Not necessarily across the country. That's why you see
is
that
is that pulse being, is that a political pulse that is felt across the country? That once you get the NRM flag, then you are almost there. Across the 50 mark.
If you went and analyzed very well where this violence is taking place, you will find that actually it's where NRM is very strong. Where there are chances of having an opposition person winning a certain constituency, there is no much violence there. The candidates know they are going to compete, you know, several times. But where the NRM is very strong, those ones know, once I get the flag, I'm already in the 11th parliament. So they are fighting so much to ensure that they are the ones who take up that. I think that is partly my honest analysis of this. And you know, the legacy, no legacy is so richer than honesty. I wanted to be bluntly honest on that.
Okay, what about, how about, I asked you about the political economy.
Yes.
In terms of the expectations for the benefits at Parliament, is that a big driver?
I was coming to that.
Good, go for it.
That, you know, the politics of Uganda has become quite highly commercialized, partly because politics is becoming the most lucrative job in the country, unfortunately. It's the most lucrative job because when you try to balance it up with the other professions in the country, on average, a member of parliament earns a relatively very high salary. And
average about 36 million, between 36 to 40.
Now tell me how many jobs in Uganda pay 36 million shillings. I think the governor of the central bank,
think there are more than
and
10.
a few other
Central Bank, KCCA,
yes.
URA.
If you went to government to work in government,
UCC.
all of these people you see in government, because the head of a ministry is the PS.
Yeah.
It is just recently that they were given 15 million shillings. The next to the PS is a director. A director earns 3 million shillings.
Wasn't it increased?
No. A commissioner earns 1.8 million shillings. So these are big people in the ministry. When you come to private sector, it's even worse. except if you are going to be the CEO, or, and in a few companies, and you know Ugandan economy is quite very narrow. So people are selling houses, they are selling their property to go and stand because they expect a higher return on that investment than any other investment they could make with that money. And this we need to take it very seriously, and that's why I always, whenever I'm here, I say that unless Uganda addresses the issue of structural economic transformation to create productive opportunities for younger people, in the future actually we are going to find here a ballot paper which has 100 people jostling for one position.
That's your projection?
I'm telling you, because politics has been emerging gradually as the only lucrative venture people could do, get in.
Can I come back to you, because I'm told Kijaji is already online. The line is not very clear. I'm told he's out of Kampala. Honorable, can you get us? Honorable John Kijaji.
Hello.
Honorable, good evening.
Good evening to you.
How did you find yourself in Fort Portal? We knew you were supposed to be in the studio here at UBC, Honorable.
Not Fort Portal, Njeru.
Oh, you are in Njeru?
Yes, we had an issue in Njeru and I had to rush there.
That is good for us. As long as you can stay with us up to the end, because you are our important guest this evening, we don't mind. All we want from you is the information, and we appreciate that you are busy trying to sort out a number of things in the primary elections going on. So start us from, you're most welcome to the show. This is Behind the Headlines on UBC, and I had already introduced you to our viewers as the Vice Chairperson of the NRM Electoral Commission. Did I make a mistake?
You are right, absolutely right.
Thank you. Now, we are looking at the potential for violence in the NRM primaries. And the question that is begging a lot in the mind of everybody is why the violence? Why the potential violence? Why the heightened interest? Why the high stakes in a primary election, in your view, as the manager of this election?
As you know, close to 76% of the members of parliament are NRM.
Yes.
And from the last two elections, the NRM dominates the parliament, and most of the people, once you have passed the primaries, then you are sure of going to parliament. So people are putting a lot of effort, a lot of energy in the primaries to make sure that they pass the primaries, because once you have won the primaries, for 76% of them, it is a sure way of joining parliament. So definitely, as a mass party, everybody is now struggling to make sure that they go through the primaries, which are due on Friday, 4th this week. So that's the main thrust. So once the primaries are done, people are ready in parliament.
Now, start us off. What is the problem in Njeru?
Njeru, it was actually a minor problem among our candidates. We had the challenge of a few registers where some candidates were attempting to either add or delete, because our mandate was display of the the NRM voters register. There was no addition or subtraction. That was the instruction, because we were just displaying. But in some villages, they had started adding people and removing others because we are using the hard copy of the voters register, and they were beginning to cross out some people or add some people where there was space. So I had to rush there, and there was a very big complaint from the candidates. So we had to rush there. Secondly, I was also assisting my teams which were doing training because they were training today our district election officials and then the sub-county election officials who are going down to train the parish and village election officials tomorrow.
Good. Something that is important to this discussion, you can correct me, my calculation shows that there are about 425 MP constituencies, including the women. Is that the number you have today?
It's about that.
How many NRM candidates are participating in all these constituencies in total?
We have close to, for the members of parliament, the direct members of parliament, we have close to 1,650 for members of parliament. And when you put the women members of parliament, who are also about 450, and then the LC5 chairpersons are about 500 in the 136 districts.
So that quick calculation brings it to 2,600 all candidates across participating. Confirm to us, have you filled all constituencies?
We have filled all constituencies. Actually, I would like
Oh, sorry, technical team will catch him back. He was on the verge of giving us the numbers and the details of the management. Let's come back to the studio as we wait for Honorable Kijaji. That's the problem of technology. Honorable, sorry, not yet. Honorable, I was going to say Honorable Ndebesa. It's okay, you are honorable enough in academia. Let's look at, I want your take on the money issue. In the last parliament, the 9th parliament, my source told me that an MP would earn between 23 to 28, about there. Towards the end, it went up to about 30. As we talk now, you will never get it from an MP, the right amount, but we have sources who tell us that the calculation, when you consolidate it, because it is broken into different allowances, it goes, the lowest, Kampala MP gets about 37 million. And someone who comes from, say, Kabong or thereabout, maybe the area of Kidepo or Kisoro, or maybe deep in Koboko, the Yumbenia, South Sudan, gets about 42 million. That's what I am told. Do you think, like your colleague, Professor Ramadan, that this is the primary driver of the potential violence in all these places, and this boiling and juicing up of blood and all that?
Before I address that one directly, but let me first make a rejoinder to what my colleagues have pointed out, that you see the violence is because that the stakes are very high. True, the stakes are very high and fair enough, but I don't see the direct correlation between stakes being very high and then violence. Stakes can be very high and therefore the competition will be very high. And we are not suggesting here that wherever there is political competition that is very high, it tantamounts to now also being violent. The two are not necessarily correlating. You can have high competition, you can have people arguing, but not necessarily becoming violent. The question of violence may not necessarily be of the stakes being high, but I think because of the political culture of militarism that has been promoted in this country way back since the 1966. Coming back to the money question. Let's even first look at it from this angle. Whereas most people are struggling to survive after this pandemic, whereas most people are crying about earnings, about how to live, we have people who are splashing money around. It is even embarrassing, and I think it is even distorting the politics and attitudes of the citizens, that whereas most of us, most people are under stress because of economic hardships, people have splashed money and it is the talk of the day. Money was used in SEC and there was a complaint and everybody was talking about his opponent using a lot of money. We are now talking about money question. So it has become maniocracy instead of democracy. Now, in this maniocracy, we first of all want to ask, where are people getting this money? That comes back to how they are earning. So
where are they getting it from?
So most of the people who are splashing it are those who have been in parliament, as my colleague here has pointed out, and you have pointed out, whereas others are tightening their belts. That means in this country we have people who are loosening their belts because of unequal access to public resources. And this is politically embarrassing. And this is creating two countries. We have one country of the haves and another of the have-nots. And the economists here can even tell us, they normally do that analysis, the inequality in this country. He would also be talking about income inequality, but that is economists. But some of us do not look at only income inequality. He says he's also a political economist. We are looking at wealth inequality generally, but also power inequality, access to power, access to justice, access to many resources, including scholarships and all that. So there is a challenge of this politics of using money and using the military, which distorts democracy. So this does not augur well for democratic development in this country. But furthermore, and more seriously to me, it does not augur well with national integration. We have a lot of disparities. For example, according to the poverty map of Uganda, released by Uganda National Bureau of Statistics, regions, especially Eastern region, lags behind. And some regions, Karamoja, the poverty levels are at 60%. But you find in other regions, it is 7%, 12%, 20%. That's a very huge disparity. And now this huge disparity, we are looking at the candidates now conflicting with each other, and this conflict transforming into violence. Sooner than later, we are likely to have now conflict between the leaders and the led. You might just dismiss the Karamoja people and say, well, those ones have always been poor. Then when minerals are discovered, you find they are also exploited for the benefit of non-Karamojong. And these Karamojong end up coming on the streets of Kampala. When they grow old, we look at them on the streets when they are young. When they grow old, where do they disappear? Do you think they go back at Karamoj? They are here. Now we are going to have structural violence within the communities. So we shall move away from political violence during elections to structural violence because of high levels of inequality. So we have to reorient our politics such that money is not the primary issue. Because now, you see, getting a position in the government is purchasing it. It is all about purchasing. And it has become a norm It has become it has become normal, actually. It has been normalized that people are using money, and I hear my colleague Tango Doi saying, those who are using it, those who are doing this virus, we are going to punish you. When shall we see anybody being punished? People are not punished.
We need, that is an important question we need to ask.
People are not punished. They
Honorable Kijaji.
They are just rhetoric and joking around. I mean, unless we demonstrate that using money in politics or using violence in politics is not right, and it has to have a party or a political code of conduct, like Tanzania used to have a political code of conduct under the Musoma resolution. For them, in those days of Nyerere, even when you became...
Do they have it even now?
No, well, they have a party conduct, but then, like the Musoma resolution, which barred even politicians from owning businesses. But here, now, it is normal when you actually don't have a lot of money, you don't expect to be in politics. You hear people talk about, if you do not have 500 million, don't bother even joining politics. So this has distorted elections. Elections fundamentally, primarily, they are supposed to be an occasion for citizens holding those who are aspiring or those who have been in office are politically accountable.
Okay.
That's what it's supposed to do. But today, it is not holding those in power accountable or those who are aspiring to show how they would be politically accountable. The issue now, the stakes now, they say the stakes are high because they want to earn more, and therefore they are literally investing using money. And up country there, I follow. People are paying, literally. They go to Erare, they leave there some money. They go to Erare, they leave money. And if you don't have money, and you go to Erare and you don't leave there money, people will automatically dismiss you and say, for you, you have already lost elections. And this is a distortion because this is not, has not been in the past. In 1980, I was old enough, I was in high school already, and I could follow. People were not voted because of money. So the distortion of politics in those days was maybe religious affiliation. Now it has been substituted with
money,
maniocracy. So
or the gun,
and the gun. Okay. And all these are actually going 2 steps forward.
Professor, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
With all the respect, I need us to go for a break right now. I want to make a follow-up on that, and we have a touch on that issue of if money of violence, or the use of it, or using the tools of violence, have now substituted, you know, something else. At what point did the rain begin beating us? Let's go for a break right now. This is Behind the Headlines. Don't go away. We are here discussing the NRM primary elections, which are this Friday, and we are looking at the potential for violence and whether the NRM Electoral Commission has the capacity to handle that violence. We have a poll question that you can participate by answering or giving your view on. The poll question is, how best can the NRM party minimize the potential for violence in the primaries? It is right there on your screen, and the question, let me repeat, how best can NRM party minimize the potential for violence in the primaries? Let's go for a break right now. We will be back.
COVID-19 is a disease caused by the new coronavirus. Know the symptoms. They include fever, coughing, muscle pain, shortness of breath. What can you do? Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds or use an alcohol-based hand rub. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth with a tissue or flexed elbow. Discard tissues into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Maintain a distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and someone who is ill. Seek medical help if you display symptoms. Wear a mask if you are coughing or sneezing, or if you are caring for someone who is sick. Dispose of your masks into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Check trusted sources regularly for accurate information. Remember, the best prevention is to keep yourself healthy and follow these safe steps.
The Electoral Commission shall display the lists of all persons who have been recommended for deletion from the National Voters Register for a period of 10 days. That is from 11th to 20th March 2020 at each parish or ward headquarters throughout Uganda. The purpose of this display is to enable any person who may have been wrongly recommended for deletion to raise an objection to the parish or ward tribunal. The parish or ward tribunal shall consider and make the final decision concerning recommendations for inclusion, deletions, or correction made by the public. A clean register is a cornerstone for conducting peaceful, free, fair, and credible elections. Announced by the Electoral Commission.
With support from United Nations Development Program, UNDP.
Kwa wakati huu, watu wengi wanapitia changamoto ngumu. Shule zimefungwa, ajira na maisha vimepotezwa. Fujo kwenye familia na fujo dhidi ya watoto vimeongezeka. Ni rahisi kuhisi umefadhaika, uchungu, huzuni, upweke na kuogopa yatakayotokea kesho. Tatizo la kiakili lililosababishwa na janga kubwa la COVID-19 linaweza kuchanganya watoto lisipozungumziwa. Serikali ikiwa inaweka mbinu za kupima, kutibu na kutafuta wagonjwa wa COVID-19. Tunatoa wito kwa serikali kuweka huduma za afya ya akili kwa kila kituo chake cha wagonjwa. Ujumbe huu unaletwa kwenu na kituo cha AfriChild na chuo kikuu cha Makerere kwa ushirikiano na Wizara ya Jinsia, Ajira na Maendeleo ya Jamii.
Welcome back from the break, and we are into the second segment of the Behind the Headlines of this edition. Today, the 2nd of September 2020. It's a Wednesday, and we have 2 days to go to vote for the voters across the country, to vote for whoever they are going to choose to be the flag bearer, as they call it, or to represent the party, the NRM party, in the main election that will be held or that will be had at the beginning of 2021. Before we went for the break, the Honorable Ndebesa had argued that the politics generally in the country of violence and money have only replaced something else. And let's Professor, you need to explain that more, because especially I'm interested in you sharing with our viewers on whether we can put a hand on where exactly the country began to, because I was young, but I have been told by people who have followed our politics that 1996, the election was not as monetized, if you talk about money, as of now. Not, I think not even 2001. Yes, violence in 2001 was talked about a lot, violence. Even the one of 1996, violence was talked a lot about. But how about, let's first talk about the issue of the, crazy monies that people are preparing, the financial war chest is just unbelievable. Someone told me that someone in one of the constituencies in Western Uganda has prepared to use 780 million just for the primary. How about the main election? How much will they get when they come back, even if they go through? How about people who lose? How do they regain this money?
But before we come to that money question, let's also maybe make a correction about violence.
Yes.
Uganda's elections have been characterized by violence
throughout.
In 1961, 62 especially, 1962, there was too much violence here in Uganda. And that one was not orchestrated by the state, but it was by the local state. That was the Buganda government versus especially supporters of DP who were Catholics. Even their houses were burnt, and their crops were cut down. And then you find in 1980, especially in West Nile region, there was violence, and some MPs were even prevented from participating in the elections. So it has been a disease that has grown, the cancer that has grown, and there has not been much effort used to stem it. And now it is even more militarized. Now, coming back to the question of money. Money, actually, in the 1960s and 80s elections was not an issue, almost at all. And whichever candidate stood, even if you were poor, you had other issues to contend with. Now, the challenge today, even in the CA elections, there was money. In 1996, there was also money used. But, of course, it is escalating. Why it is escalating, among other reasons, is that when in Uganda now we no longer have political values or interests that people compete for. You see, a political value would endear you to your candidate.
Tell my viewer what you mean in political science terms by political value.
A political value, let's use a practical example, like here in the Buganda region, people might be valuing federalism, and therefore they look at federalism.
So it is the ideology, in other words? Or are they linked?
They are linked, but they can be interchangeably used. But values at times are different. For example, in the Americas, when they talk about pro-life and
pro-abortion, pro-life.
Yeah, pro-life and pro-choice. Or when you find in the European countries, there are those who are for immigration or for welfare. There are those who are for economics of welfare, and there are those who are economics for the rich. And now here we do not have clear values for which people are campaigning, and therefore candidates do not easily identify. Sorry, the voters do not identify with the candidates along a value. And therefore, what differentiates a candidate from another now is who pays more. But also, I think the government has not also condemned it and suppressed it, because it started with this notion of facilitation. That when you invite people, you have to facilitate them. Now, facilitation can be defined elastically. It could mean actually giving people money. You just call somebody in Kampala to meet him or her, and you say, I have given you a facilitation of $1 million. Definitely somebody who can
from Makerere to Sheraton.
Then you are transport of $1 million. You are facilitated by $1 million. Certainly, you can see that is a veiled way of saying we are corrupting you. So it is lack of political values and interests and principles that are very clear, for which people can identify, such that if I am a voter of Gobi here or you there, I associate with you, I link with you, because we share the same values. Today, the question of values, if we asked the candidates, if we asked even educated people, today, I have asked even my students when I'm teaching to talk about the political spectrum. The question of political spectrum, that is whether one is left or right or center or whatever. They say they have never had that. Even political science students, they have never heard of that. Therefore, we have transferred Western political systems here, but they seem not to be practiced as they should be. That when there is political competition along political parties or within political parties, it is somebody who the one whom you share a certain political direction, a certain political value, a certain political outlook, a certain political orientation that you identify with. Therefore, identification of candidates now with the voters is nothing but paying money. In the past, if I can make a distinction, is that in 1960s, for example, this is where now one could even go to say that the question of religion was cutting across the whole country. There are certain, like for example, the DPs, who were mainly Catholics, had been marginalized during the colonial period. And therefore, they identified themselves with justice for that group.
Truth and justice.
Not necessarily truth and justice, but justice against the injustice, the historical injustice of the British.
Why are you editing the mantra of DP? Mao will not be happy with you because it is truth and justice.
Because I'm a historian and I know better than what you people are talking about. Now,
the truth is not supposed to be there.
The UPC, the UPC had emerged out of UNC, and it was a struggle for economic justice against domination of the whites and the Indians.
Okay.
And it was for the marginalized. Now all parties have converged. They have converged, do you know on what? On nothing. Nobody is talking about those political spectrum issues. It is not the peasants, because peasants have been left. They are only solicited for being paid so that they can give a vote.
Okay.
It is not for business, because nobody is seriously talking about the business orientation. It's not even against imperialism and Western domination. It is a question of who can pay most. And that is the challenge, which was not there in the past, because in the past, people had certain orientation based on whatever, even if it was a wrong orientation, but it was an orientation. Okay. Today, the orientation is who can pay you most.
Okay. Gobi, can you put a pulse or feel where, in your view, the issue of money took center stage in our Ugandan politics, apart from the violence?
You know, Charles, it's not long ago we had a conversation here on the same. First of all, by the way, thank you for keeping on the mask so that I can remove mine. You are very good.
I'm sacrificing for you.
I said that, and I quoted the research.
Yeah.
There is nowhere in the world, not a single country, where democracy has been sustained, where economics has failed. Professor is a professor of history. He will tell us whether he knows
no
such
country,
countries.
no single nation in the world,
no single country
has
sustained
democracy where the economy is not working.
Exactly. Beyond 12 years.
Here, democracy, you are referring to liberal democracy.
Absolutely. Democracy which works.
No,
in other words,
even others work.
You know, I believe in economics which works. That's what I teach. I also believe in a democracy which works.
Okay.
Democracy works. There is a man called Adam
Smith
Sawitsky, who is a professor at New York University. He was at Harvard and went to New York. He's a fantastic researcher in political economy. Celebrated, actually.
Yeah.
He did research a few years ago, not few, very few, about 15 years ago also, where he analyzed all countries and their history of democracy. And he found that wherever a country was below $1,000 of per capita income, they sustained democracy for 12 years. And after that, the democracy failed. That's why you see Professor is telling you, at the beginning, even here, we didn't have these issues we are seeing today. Violence, too much money, and so on.
Violence, but not
the
too much
democracy was a bit working because we were still in that bracket of the 12 years. When you are below $3,000 but above 1,000, you sustain democracy for 27 years.
From 12 to 27.
When you are above 3,000 but below 60,000, you sustain democracy for 60 years. When you are above $60,000, you sustain democracy forever. Now, when the professor is talking about some of these things of values and so on, those things don't work in real life. What works in real life is economics. People, those other values, like for example, why was there no violence, for example, at the beginning? Perhaps people were rallying their politics on other interests.
But there was violence in 62.
Like a religion, like tribes and so on. So people would go and vote a tribesmate. People would go and vote a fellow Catholic. Those things don't work now. What works now is who has the money. Politics is an exciting thing. Politics is as exciting as any other thing. I don't know whether you know things which excite people. For example, sport. Haven't you seen people fighting over football?
Yeah.
Are they fighting because they are violent?
No.
Excitement without rules is what actually causes a problem. The rules of the game in Uganda's politics are either not there, or where they are not enforced. Even in football, we see the same things here in Uganda. In stadiums, the fans are fighting. Not because of that were brought up badly or what. No. It's because the stadiums and those who are running the football have not put rules of the game defining how spectators should behave, and when you do not adhere to those rules, what happens to you? The same violence used to happen, for example, even in Europe. You find in the UK, fans were dying in stadiums. It was in 1992.
The British fans with the Russians.
With the Russians. Even the Manchester
United kill themselves. Even.
Liverpool versus Manchester, they fight. And they make a stadium collapse because of that excitement and fighting. Until a man, I think it was called Williamson or something, wrote a code of conduct for premiership in 1992 and said this must be enforced. Every fan must have a seat with a number, and if we find anyone throwing something like a bottle from a certain seat, you are committing a crime, you go to jail, or you will never be allowed in the stadium again. That reduced violence in Europe. So this violence you see in Uganda is partly because the politics of Uganda is not being managed by any rules. Those people who are giving out money, buying some youth to go and cause violence and so on, they are doing it because they know nothing will happen to them. That one I finished it.
So are you indicting, in this case, Tangodoi, Kijaji and their team,
I think
that they are just pretending, in other words. They can never do anything.
Really spare
or we are expecting too much.
Spare the innocent souls. Tangodoi, what would Tangodoi do? I'm saying you need rules, and who is going to enforce them? If Uganda chooses to have politics without violence, from next week, I'm telling you it can have it. But we are not enforcing the rules.
How about if Uganda chooses that there should not be, is it possible to have rules on how much money you can use?
Absolutely.
Like the US has.
All of those things. For example,
how would you motivate? Talk to that.
Let me tell you. And I wanted to bring in the aspect of money,
yes,
to show him that actually money is everywhere.
Please, go for it.
In a democracy. Because you'll find that even in the US, who are the grandparents of democracy, whichever candidate fundraises the highest amount of money, in most cases they have the big.
It's good you said in most cases, because
in most cases they win.
In the last election, I think at one time Hillary fundraised beyond.
Yeah, and Hillary won the majority vote.
Okay.
But if
I agree with you. That I agree with you.
Obama fundraised in every race he had the two.
A little bit.
Yes, go for it.
Yes, the money there, but the money there is for running elections, not for paying voters.
What
the
difference
here is in the paying of the voters. There it is money fundraised for managing and running the campaign. Actually, most money is collected from the
managing
voters and from the corporates. Here it is the opposite. The money is coming from the candidates themselves,
because we don't have
paying the voters.
One thing,
that's a slight difference.
I agree with you. Yes. One thing in Uganda, we don't have corporates. because there are no corporations. That's first. Secondly, another thing is, in Uganda, most of the people who are going to vote, they are below $1,000, I told you. And therefore, they need lunch. They need transport to go and vote. They need this and that. In Europe, everybody has, or in America, everybody has means of taking them to the booth where they are going to go and vote from. By the way, for them, they don't go and they say, this is the election you done, whatever. No, you go to the booth and you vote. You go back home. Here, they tell you, if you don't keep the ballot there, somebody is going to steal your vote. So keep there. Now, someone will ask you, why should I keep there? What is it for me in this? That's why you see Adam is telling you that first build the economy, then you are going to have a democracy. I want to also tell you that there are two ways of accumulating wealth. For us economists, we know. Two ways. One is through wealth actually accumulation by either running a business or producing something. Another one is through wealth transfer from others to yourself. And that
inheriting or someone gifting you.
No, but also politics. And even outright theft.
Or criminality.
Yeah, theft is wealth transfer.
Theft is part of criminality.
No, criminality is
wider.
Because you can get money as a prostitute even.
I don't want to be a genius. I don't want to be a genius to know that in Uganda, most of the wealth you see people running around with is from the second means. Wealth transfer, not wealth accumulation. And because of that, therefore, you find that the issue of logistics, that word logistics, even in politics of primary schools where they are electing a head monitor, you find the parents have to buy sweets for their kids to go and campaign and win. If they don't give sweets, they are not going to win. In these schools in Kampala, and then the villages also, they at least come with some pieces of cassava. So we have a very, very big challenge in Uganda we must work on in terms of getting, you know, the moralists like a professor, they call it values. Me, I call it the economics which works. And they mean the same thing. I think we need really to ensure that the return on investment in politics ceases to be in terms of money and billions of shillings. That's why it is wrong for us to pay political leaders big wages. We call it real, you know, we have both financial as well as real crowding out effects. When government borrows, for example, from commercial banks, it crowds out private sector from the borrowing because government has taken the money the private sector would have taken. When government of Uganda decided that a member of parliament can be paid 30 million shillings in 30 days, 1 million shillings every day, it crowded out private sector in real terms. How? That now you find medical doctors, engineers, and all other sophisticated people we have spent on a lot of money to train, all of them are running to politics, leaving the theaters where they are supposed to be operating people and construction sites where they are supposed to be constructing things, because parliament is paying a higher wage than the other alternatives.
They are supposed to pay to a professional.
We need to go back and just facilitate leaders to lead. You will get the leaders which Uganda deserves.
Okay. Professor, how would you, he has suggested crowding out as one of the means of bringing this money thing to an end, or checking it. What would be your solution to this menace? if I may call it that,
I think
in politics?
I think my colleague here hinted on it. If we wanted to reduce it, we can't eliminate it, but we can reduce it, we can minimize it. It depends upon the leadership. If the leadership became serious and condemned as well as acted against the use of money, then there would be disincentive for people to use that money. The challenge we have here is that the one who uses money most and pays most and wins is the one who is rewarded. He's the one who is given ministerial posts. They are the ones who are honored by the political establishment. And even those who are violent, you find somebody is very violent and he is rewarded. You find somebody who steals elections. There is somebody who voted twice or something like that and was rewarded with a ministerial post. So unless we come out in a political system which rewards political hygiene and punishes political unhygiene, then you cannot discourage people. There is a need to discourage, to create a disincentive for the use of money and for use of violence, so that when you use money or you use violence in an election or you actually cheat, you are punished. But we have a system which rewards those other irregularities, whereby those who pay most, those who cheat, those who are violent are the ones given ministerial posts, are the ones given higher high status positions. They are even praised. So as long as we have got a political system that rewards irregularities and punishes those who do best, we shall continue to have a problem. This is not only in the politics per se, but in the whole body politic of Uganda.
Doesn't it extend to even the cultural and social setting of Uganda, which makes it a lot even more sophisticated and, I mean, complicated to solve? There was a study, I think, done, I think, by the DGF some few years ago, and it touched on exactly what you are talking about. The idea of our social structure, you know, rewarding people and putting them to sit even in front in churches, in fundraising functions, regardless of where they got their wealth from. And therefore it becomes a cycle, and politics is now only eating off that kind of thing. Does that now make it really easy to resolve?
Let us even put it in a wider context.
Yeah.
In our society in Uganda, actually the whole of Africa, why we are underdeveloped is because there is no meritocracy. We reward those who are not meritocratic, who do not deserve to be rewarded.
Meritorious.
Who are not meritorious, we just manipulators. In Uganda, you find the manipulators are the ones who are highly regarded by society and rewarded by society, rather than those who are meritocratic, if I can say that. The Southeast Asian countries, or Asian countries generally, including China, they have overcome their problems of underdevelopment because of meritocracy. And therefore, even in politics, you find that the one who knows how to manipulate, in our area we call it changa-changa, those who changa-changa, those who actually are doing the wrong things are the ones who are rewarded. Now, we need somebody who can come up, like Nyerere, the way partly he built a nation in Tanzania. He was very serious. I am told, I'm a graduate of Dar es Salaam University. At one time, Nyerere would be in an office, and when you are a police officer, he has summoned you from Southern region or wherever, he has summoned you to come and see him over a matter. You just come in his office and he asks you, police officer, how have you come here? By what means? Say, I have come driving. Says, what does my wife do? So he's a civil servant somewhere. What is her salary? Is this much? What is your salary? It is this much. How did you buy that vehicle? It means you are corrupt. Can he immediately go and park? I have dismissed you, go and do business. I have appointed a new police officer. Somebody who is serious. Nyerere himself did not build his own house until he retired, and CCM built him a house. Nyerere would go to the bank and line up in order to get money from the bank to pay fees. That is somebody who actually practiced what he talked about. So, in this country, we need to reorient our politics and be serious. As long as ours is a society of rewarding mediocres and punishing those who are meritorious, then everybody is going to just say, go with you. Let the things go like that. So, in politics, we have really had a system that promotes the use of money. But before I conclude, I wanted to make a comment about economics and democracy. Incidentally, when you analyze global politics now and in relation to democracy, if we talk about democracy as equal participation or participation of citizens in managing their political affairs, democracy is declining even in the fatherlands of democracy. And yet, the economy is still going up. So, it is a question of the egg and the chicken. Which one begins first? I think by 1940s, when you go to countries like Scandinavian countries, and most countries actually, democracy was doing better than it is doing today. So it does not follow that the more money you have, the more democratic you can be, although it is a fair argument. It is a question of other variables, not necessarily the more economically powerful you are. The USA democracy is declining. Can you imagine the USA people are electing these people who do not know one or two things about international democracy or even local democracy, and they are racists and supremacists? I don't want to believe that professor of yours in totality, although partly so. Even in Uganda here, we can promote some democracy. Definitely, we shall not have perfect democracy. Democracy, by the way, is not necessarily good always. They are what we call paradoxes of democracy. Democracy itself, involving people, can lead to certain challenges of society. But we need to have an orderly society. We need to have a society that involves most people in decision making to a certain level, and all these challenges can always be followed up. The problem is that we are degenerating, especially in the use of violence and the use of money. But we can have democracy which involves people. Now, we should not just sit back and say, you see, we are poor and therefore we cannot have democracy. Two, that we shall have violence as long as there are stakes very high, and therefore NRM members, because when they pass through primaries, they will go to parliament. No, we have to stop this business of laissez-faire. We have to stop people paying in order to go to parliament. And how do we stop it? There are very many ways that I cannot exhaust here. But among them is for citizens to reject this business. For example, this thing I started with. How dare people go and splash money in this COVID era when we don't know what to eat next day and people are splashing money? We should stop it conventionally or even unconventionally.
I wanted to ask you, but let me ask the view of your colleague Ramadan on that, and whether it is possible in practical terms. I know we can moralize these things, these proposals, but is it possible to have, let's say, a population that comes to a rally and they know that their transport is supposed to be refunded or that they are supposed to eat, to have them say, no, we are not going to eat that food, when amongst them some are even hungry, given the current poverty. I want to start with him, and then I will come back to you before we go for the break. Ramadan, is that moralistic approach possible? If it is not possible, and that we recognize that even in higher democracies like the US, money is needed, but for what use? How do we then balance the use of the money?
You know, Charles, for your question, let me remove this thing. For your question, a hypothetical questions get hypothetical answers. And I wouldn't want to give you one, which is hypothetical. The truth of the matter is, and I would want to convince really my good friend, the professor here. I enjoy always, listening to him. That there is a strict difference between the ideal and the reality. Reality is, in poverty, values, they are the first thing which get out of the window. That's the reality.
Where poverty permeates society, values are the first to jump out.
Oh yeah.
To be thrown out.
Oh yeah.
Which values are there that are straightforward in USA because they are rich? About
100 years ago. Actually, even you see, even US, you are always bringing on 15% of the Americans, they are below international poverty line.
That's true.
I want you to bring me societies where what we call well-being of people is catered for. And you ask me whether democracy is not working.
Scandinavian countries, not that they are 100% perfect.
Scandinavian
but they have less than 15%.
Yes, Scandinavian countries invested in improving the well-being of humanity,
Japan,
first and foremost.
Yeah.
And those countries have really democracies which work. They may be not 100%, you can't have 100%, but they are working. They made deliberate moves to ensure that the people who are going to vote, they will not come to vote because they don't have lunch and somebody has promised them lunch or a t-shirt.
Now you are talking.
You get it?
Not because they were economically powerful, but because they deliberately
that's what I'm telling you.
Planned to have a fair system. I agree with you.
No, you know, Prof, fairness, the word fairness does not exist in the purview of economics. What is fair? You know those words of philosophers.
How about justice?
And the clergy.
What about social justice?
What about justice?
Let me tell you, all those words you are talking about, fairness, equality.
You see, economists.
No, we have substitutions.
Economists
like in law, the best you may not have equality, but you can talk of equity.
I know. And in economics, equity exists. But you as a trade-off. You trade off efficiency and get equity. You can't have both.
But
likewise,
both have equality as well as efficiency.
No, sir. They traded something else.
What was it?
What did they trade off?
That's why you see in Scandinavia, you will not find a billionaire in dollars. They don't appear on the list of the Forbes.
So you will not have the billionaires, but you will have
good welfare of society.
Good welfare, what we are calling social justice.
Yes.
You are having and something like no equality, because there are some who are rich, certainly, but and can go on a holiday of 3 months, whereas some will not, but at least they will have equitably some level, good, decent, respectable level of life.
I'm enjoying this conversation. It's one of the best. Now, you need to see that if Uganda, for example, took those deliberate steps to say that we are going to build a society which is not necessarily pursuing efficiency, but also must pursue equity, and not pursuing equity, but also must pursue efficiency, and merit, you are on track.
Where does it start from? Because I used to like this issue of government, if Uganda, like you're saying. But I reached a certain point and said, wait a minute, who are the government? Who are the Ugandans? You cannot say when Uganda, because that is not responsibility. Where should that begin from? At which office? Let's start.
The office which is occupied by leaders. You know,
MPs,
there's a man, let me define for you quickly.
Yeah.
There's a man called Walter Lippmann. I don't know whether I've
heard of
Walter Lippmann was a philosopher in the US. He wrote a book Public Opinion. That's its title. I would want anyone to go and Google that book and you read it. Public Opinion.
The yellow cover, I think yellow red cover.
That book now is about 100 years old. In that book, Walter Lippmann said that in every society there are two groups of people, two classes of people. He called one class the specialized class and another class of bewildered herd.
The bewildered?
The bewildered herd.
The bewildered herd.
The bewildered herd. You know bewilderment?
Yes.
Excitement. The herd of excited. I think some of us, we have ever grazed animals.
Yes.
If you are going to water, for example, the animals, or you are bringing them from watering point, and one of the cows starts running.
They smell it, actually.
You
they
see
smell
all of them.
water.
Yeah, starting running.
Yeah. For them, they smell water. They
When
say
one is
no
kicking
smell,
it,
but animals, especially in dry season,
absolutely,
they take off and you cannot control
when
them.
one starts kicking the hind legs, they all of a sudden start kicking and running.
So that is the bewildered
That's the
herd.
bewildered herd. Walter Lippmann was a very, very clever man. He said, whenever you are in charge of a society, never allow the bewildered herd to take charge. Make sure that the specialized class, and this is a class of very few people, individuals, who can qualify for it in leadership, in the military, in the clergy, and so on. But now when you see
that's perfect capitalism.
When you see societies, some of our
which
societies
does not actually deliver what we are talking about, social justice, equity, and all that kind of thing.
You see, that
they
class
they
of
aim for
those societies,
the winner takes all, which is what is causing us problems.
That class of leadership he's talking about, unless it is informed by the social justice value, they will still promote those interests that are in favor of the privileged. So even those so-called specialized people who are not bewildered must be informed by a norm for the public good. Unless you situate their reasoning and policies and plans into the public good, you will still have a class of people who will promote society for the individual privileged class. So the struggle we have now, even in Uganda, is between those who are for social justice and those who are for privileges.
No, sir. I think the problem of Uganda actually is that the bewildered herd is gradually taking over from the so-called specialized class.
Let's come back from our last break
and the military.
Let's go for a break right now. But before we go for that break, Paul Oluka, he says is listening in from is listening live on Facebook, on the Facebook live stream from Serere. And he's telling me that, hello Charles, thanks for the show. I'm live here from Serere, and I can tell you the violence here between the incumbent and aspirant, Honorable Otala, is very hot, to the extent of them fighting. And the reason for the fighting is witchcraft. One of them is accused of performing witchcraft at another's home. I'm now editing to avoid any potential legal because I would become culpable if I read people's names, and so I need to say for him he has mentioned names, but I will not mention the names, but that one of them has performed witchcraft at night at the home of another, and this has caused the fight. Let's go for a break. This is Behind the Headlines. Unfortunately, we have lost the vice chairman. The line from Tunjeru, where he is right now, we are not picking him clearly. We will try, endeavor to bring him back. We are supposed to have Kijaji up to the end of this discussion so that he can give us insights into the NRM primaries from the field where he happens to be right now. But if we get him, we will bring him right on. But let's go for that break right now.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
Until now, we can watch our favorite shows.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
We are back on air, and this is Behind the Headlines, coming your way live from UBC Broadcast House. And I'm in the studio with professors only today. Professor Mwambutsia Ndebesa is a lecturer at Makerere University. He's a political scientist and historian. We have in the studio Mr. Ramadan Gobi is also a professor. He teaches political economy at Makerere University Business School. We are missing our panelist members. Honorable Margaret Muhanga is she's feeling unwell, and we hope that the fever of the primaries don't put her down to the extent she misses voting for herself on Friday. We wish you well, Honorable Margaret Muhanga. I'm sure you are watching us from the comfort of your house in Fort Portal. Honorable Abdu Katuntu, we have missed you for some time. Today we were supposed to have him on Zoom, but we failed to get him. We got the Honorable is he vice chairman or deputy chairman of the Electoral Commission of NRM, Honorable John Arimpa, a former member of parliament from Mbarara and Mbarara municipality, and now vice chairperson of the NRM Electoral Commission, but he was sent abruptly this evening to Njeru to sort out one of the election issues there, and our line is not fine with him. It's actually his line which is not very perfect. We will keep trying to get him so that he can offer us some insights into how many cases of violence they have registered, how many they have disposed of, and whether that can be, whether we can expect a smooth or a near smooth primary election on Friday. And we say this because it's important that if it is the biggest party right now, and it has fielded candidates throughout the country, then its conduct or the character of the elections that it produces should be near perfect or near smooth, so that we know, hopefully or even optimistically, that come the main election in January or February, we will not have a violent election, because this is, the biggest party in the country currently. We have comments and questions that are coming from the poll question of this evening. My technical team has them ready. I can start by, as they bring me those poll questions, someone called Ben is saying that, Charles, this discussion today is only academic than offering real perspective in Uganda. We needed some contextual debate on Uganda's issues. Ben, my comment to you is that this is contextual, except probably you wanted someone who is standing in one of the constituencies somewhere. But this is also contextual. So you cannot take away that from the discussion going on currently. My technical team, please, Ivan, give me the how best, our question is, how best can NRM party minimize the potential for violence in the primaries? That's the question, the poll question. Niwasima Avin says, it's only after realizing that we share a planet that they will stop chasing squabbles and redo society, with the top leadership posing pivotal examples in this. So Avin is challenging the top leadership. And Ramadan, I asked you that question. Probably I will need to ask Professor Ndevesa the same question. Bring more of the responses. Ben Ossi says, NRM cannot manage the current politicians' dark sides because, 1, most of them are minders. 2, age group, the young are mixed up with old at the same post. Is that so? Okay, that's your view. I respect it. 3, Electoral Commission must amalgamate with parties to have age limits. Is it the role of Electoral Commission? That's your view, though. I thought age limit is set by Parliament in the Constitution. But 4, Ben Ossi says there should be term limitations for each member. Okay, that sounds a good proposal, Ben. Tony Kent says, this is my guy, he says, civic education is the answer. Ugandans, it's not just those supporting NRM, should know what brings about peace, the rightful processes to follow in an election, and the repercussions of violence. The law should be law indeed, and not a passive phenomenon. Thanks, Tony. There is another one which was sent by another person who is listening to us. Did I get the name correctly? I will, when I rip it off, I will share it with you. But let's start from those, Professor. You can pick on any of those proposals from the viewers, as well as where the earlier question I asked Gobi, I wanted to ask you as well. Where should these solutions begin from? Point to any office that you think, and give us why that office is significant to ensuring that such a proposal can work effectively.
Let me begin with the context. Somebody was saying, but we were contextualizing, but let me contextualize and give the example. I think in the 7th or 8th parliament, one of the parliaments, there was violence in elections, and there was a parliamentary committee probe.
That was the 7th parliament.
I
remember.
Yes.
I remember.
They went and did the probe, the investigation.
I actually remember it was chaired by the current, that probe was, select committee was chaired by the current, is now a justice of the Supreme Court, Nshimie.
Okay.
Is the one actually who chaired that committee.
Then they came out with findings, they wrote a report, presented it to Parliament, but it has never seen the light of the day. It was shelved, I think deliberately, because it was touching the issues that would have, it was touching maybe issues of those who are in power. Therefore, if the government was interested in reducing these incidences of violence, that should have been discussed, and maybe a law or laws would have been made in order to correct that anomaly. That it was shelved, it is in my opinion, it is an indicator that the powers that be did not mind about that violence. At times, by the way, violence can be an instrument of governance. I don't know whether President Museveni, Comrade Museveni, we are all busy in most of Dar es Salaam.
You are the people eating. You say it in other words.
I'm not eating.
You, the Dar es Salaam graduates.
Forget about the eating. They are those who are not eating. But the point I wanted to make is that he wrote his BA dissertation, graduating dissertation. In their days, is not my age mate. In their days, they used to write BA graduating dissertations. And his BA graduating dissertation was Fanonian Theory of Violence and its Verification in Mozambique. In fact, President Museveni went to Mozambique in the liberated zone first to do his research for that graduating paper in the liberation of the frontline states. And in that thesis of Fanon, I hope most people know Frantz Fanon.
Frantz Fanon.
Frantz Fanon was saying that violence liberates, violence emancipates. But the context he was using, I think we are now using it in the wrong context. He was talking about violence against colonialism.
Yes.
But we are now practicing violence against fellow citizens. And I think the two circumstances are different. But at times you might find violence is an instrument of governance. Because, for example, the violence
it liberated the South Africans from apartheid.
But I'm saying the context.
Liberated Uganda.
The context matters. Because now we seem to be, for example, when Zaka is beaten, or Chagurangi is beaten, or Besigye is beaten, it doesn't become an issue. And that is why the 7th Parliament came up with a report, and the report was not discussed, because that means violence, somehow, to a certain extent, was supported as an instrument of governance. So, if the state, if the governance, if the political elites wanted to overcome the issue of violence, let that report, even that one of the 7th Parliament, be discussed, or we can have another be discussed, and when we come up with solutions, let them be practiced. The challenge we have now is that when people use violence, they go away with it. In other words, there is a sense, not in all cases, but there is a sense in which violence is an instrument of governance. And therefore, it is not all that condemned. It is part and parcel of the governance system that we are operating today. And therefore, to overcome it, we have to have a paradigm shift. We have to shift from that violence and militarism to civil administration and civil rule. We have to move away from idealizing the military in politics to something else. Because today, political competition is very much tied up with the issue of the military. Today, I was listening to the news. The ISO of somewhere was participating in this exercise. The military spokesman, the lady, who is she now? Brigadier who?
Brigadier
Biekwaso.
Yes.
She was saying,
she
was actually warning to the extent that she realized that there is a problem, that we are going to withdraw that military. The military is participating in this election exercise. When you look at the way the police behave, they are so violent that even when they emit out violence to the citizens, to the voters, there is nothing much that is done beyond saying we are going to carry out investigations and then administrative measures are going to be taken. Before you know it, the very officer, the very commanding officer who meted out violence to the journalists or to the opposition or to whatever group is promoted, is actually given a higher rank than he had been on when he beat the people. So we have to be very careful.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
To the one of the military, to make us understand context is always important. You talked about, you said, and I liked it, you said militarism is not necessarily the use of military people or soldiers. And you gave the example of Obote's time and all that use of militarism. Now, how about in this election that some of these elections we are referring to? Is it possible that some of our military men or people in uniform are actually being abused and actually being misused by people to whom there is a responsibility of being guarded, and they abuse that power? In which case, then the question is, should we really blame these military people, or should we blame the politicians who use them or abuse them or actually misuse them?
First of all, when I talked about Obote and militarism, I did not say he didn't use the military. He used the military.
Yes, I said that is what I meant.
But he was a civilian, so it is a policy question.
Yeah.
Now, about the military being abused, I mean, they also accept to be abused. because they could stand and say, no, we are not going to participate.
No, their training does not allow it.
Their training is that at times they just command themselves to go and beat people without being commanded by the civilians. But nevertheless, when they are abused, then there should be mechanisms to overcome that abuse. That the system, both in the military and the civilian side, should combine to make sure that those who command them to abuse their ranks and their power should be punished. But even the military as well should be punished. But hitherto, you can see, even we have members of the military in parliament, by the way. And the argument that has been advanced
by our constitution, 10 of them,
which was wrong, by the way, especially the argument. The argument was that once you put them in parliament, they will not be tempted to take over government. I want to put it to those who don't know the history, that even UNLA of Obote of 1980 had 10, actually like this number, in parliament. But that did not stop Rutwa from taking over the government then. Okay. So that argument does not hold water.
That's a good one.
That argument does not hold water.
In terms of looking for solutions, Bill is saying you should discuss, I think that's what we are on, that's how do we, since you are all good analysts, how do you sanitize our politics? I think we will need to touch on that specifically, but I think you have been touching on some of the areas already. And then someone called Nteje says that, I think from Bushenyi, Nteje says, pay MPs Uganda shillings 5 million and you will not see this nonsense in Shema, Bushenyi, and other parts of Uganda again.
The MPs are the ones who make that decision to pay themselves.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, it is in the constitution that MPs I think are the only ones who determine their emolument by law. So unless and there has been that discussion that create a salary commission that then sets salaries for all this. But even if you did that, the law does not, our current law does not allow you to set a salary which is to their disadvantage from that point. So let's say you start with the salary commission now. How long will it take to have maybe a director of a civil servant who is a director, commissioner, reaching the level of 40 million or 35 million so that they are at par with an MP, and you are making sure that the MP does not increase his or her salary?
And they may go around it and say theirs is not a salary, it is an allowance, and therefore that is not under the armpit of the salary commission.
That's the lawmaker for you. Gobi, start us on some of these questions coming up for solutions, and how do we sanitize?
I will start with a very quick question to the professor, and I would want a quick answer. Maybe it is actually the question I will ask him today. If militarism, in quotes, is the cause of violence in Uganda, one of the main causes of violence in Uganda, what explains the violence in Kenyan politics?
You want me to ask immediately?
Yes, quickly.
I said it here categorically that militarism does not necessarily mean the military in
I understand.
The office. You know how the Kenyan police, they call it what? There is a police outfit there which is more violent than even our police units here. So Kenya is not devoid of militarism. Secondly, Kenyan violence actually, apart from picking individuals and assassinating them in the past, it is what you would term communal violence. Normally the violence in Kenya is not state-inspired, apart from the few assassinations. In Uganda, you have got the state-sponsored violence all throughout our history. I hope you make that distinction between Kenya and Uganda, where in Kenya it is communal violence, and that one which is done by their kind of military police, that one is militarism also in politics. So Kenya is not also purely civilian.
Thank you.
That is my quick answer.
So I would want to really point you to the fact that most of these developing democracies have a tendency of people seeing no chance of recourse. That when, for example, someone loses this primary, there is no place where they are going to go and get justice. And they end up therefore looking for quick ways of fixing that challenge by ensuring that they don't lose the election. They don't get, for example, what has made everywhere I've been watching these news on this television where there is violence, they are claiming of, I think, alteration of
names. Removal of names is very rampant.
Yes.
Removal
so it's about
of names,
the register.
Yes, from the register. That a candidate, one of the candidates gets the name, the register, and goes and sits with it in their house and starts deleting.
Yes.
How possible is that even?
That's so governance.
So